back with the breaking news. President Trump naming a replacement for the fired National Security Advisor Michael Flynn, turning to an active duty Lieutenant General H.R. McMaster. Let's continue our conversation with Senator Chris Coons, a Democrat on the Foreign Relations Committee. Secretary Mattis, the Defense Secretary, visited Iraq today. He's working on anti-ISIS options to present to the president. Listen to then candidate Donald Trump back in September talking about he would handle ISIS. Listen to this.
So we're going to convene my top generals and give them a simple instruction. They will have 30 days to submit to the Oval Office a plan for soundly and quickly defeating ISIS. We have no choice.
It's now been 32 days, and now he says they will have a plan by the end of the month. Is this the right approach from your perspective?
Well, it is the right approach to take a fresh look at our strategy for defeating ISIS, but it is going to require real engagement and genuine leadership from President Trump for us to be successful leading a multinational coalition. Most of the fighting needs to be done by local forces with support, with equipment, with intelligence and logistics and coordination done by American forces. But frankly, as the assault on Mosul continues in Iraq and as the beginning of the assault on Raqqa is happening in Syria, this is a very difficult and demanding time. So it's important that a thorough strategic review be done quickly, but that it be done in a way that has a mind towards balancing America's national security with what's really going to work in the context of this region.
One option for the Pentagon is to put more U.S. conventional troops on the ground inside Syria and inside Iraq, for that matter. The U.S. already has about 5,000 ground troops inside Iraq. Do you support an expansion of the U.S. military presence on the ground in those two countries?
I'd have to see the strategic argument for why that's the right answer, Wolf. My concern is that the more American forces we put, conventional forces that we put on the ground in a forward fighting role, the more we are likely to end up inflaming local passions against Americans. We had a very large troop presence on the ground in Iraq for many years, and we ended up largely succeeding in making our troops the motivating presence that inflamed a lot of Iraqis to rise up and to fight against us. We do have a more capable fighting force than any of our allies, any of the coalition forces that are currently taking the fight to ISIS. So I understand the temptation to put a larger American conventional force on the ground. But as you said, we've already got 5,000 forces in harm's way. We've already taken combat casualties. So I'll be looking forward to the strategic review that comes out of this 30-day time period that President Trump has set aside to reassess what's possible in the fight against ISIS.
Secretary Mattis, the Defense Secretary, said today the U.S. is not in Iraq, in his words, to seize anyone's oil. Differing from President Trump, who has said now on several occasions the U.S. should have kept the Iraqi oil. Does a comment like what the Secretary of Defense made today reassure you?
Well, it reassures me, but I'll point to a troubling pattern here. President Trump, candidate Trump, made a whole series of very troubling statements about NATO and about his willingness to stand with NATO to face down Russian aggression. This weekend, Vice President Pence had to reassure our NATO allies. President Trump, candidate Trump, made a whole series of troubling statements about going back to waterboarding and torture, seizing Iraqi oil, and how aggressive he might be in pursuing ISIS. This weekend, the Secretary of Defense had to reassure our allies in Iraq. Comparable things have unfolded in other places in the world. We need President Trump to be the person making calming and reassuring statements that show that he is a deliberate and well-informed head of state, rather than relying upon folks in his cabinet or his vice president to reassure our allies.
Senator Chris Coons, thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Just ahead, the president's choice to be the new national security advisor.